mostly centered around aliens. I told you guys this was going to be coming in our news. I said last year that there was going to be a false flag alien invasion coming with Project Bluebeam. So I want to start off with a little history for you history buffs. This quote right here, "Give me liberty or give me death." Who was the guy who said that? If anybody knows, go ahead and put it here in the chat, and I'll reveal it at the end. But so let's talk a little bit about the different types of aliens right now. So I've talked at length about how aliens are here under the ground. You've got the reptilians, you've got the grays, the 3-footers, the 7-footers that Phil Schneider talked about. Now, Phil Schneider, I don't know if I've mentioned this before about him, but he was the one that 1995 into the early 1996, a man by the name of Alfred Bielek, convinced Phil Schneider to go public about his knowledge of extraterrestrials. And he didn't want to at first, but as he was phasing his way out as a government contractor who was boring the tunnels with magneto-leviton technology under the ground, you talk about the trains going at the speed of Mach 2 underground above the rails, about half an inch above the rails, at about what, Mach 2? I'm not sure how many thousands of miles that would be. It might be about 1,000 miles an hour. I'm not sure. But he's the one who bored those tunnels out underground, okay? And I talk a lot about Phil Schneider. Well, once Alfred Bielek convinced Phil to go public, he started interacting. He had a couple experiences. In 1979, he had the famous firefight with the UFOs. They called it the Human-Alien War at Dulce Base under the ground in New Mexico. And he was the only surviving member of that out of, I can't remember how many people were down there. But he was the only one that came up alive. I thought he said 79, I can't remember. But a black beret actually saved his life in a scissor lift going up. Now, Phil talked about having a couple handguns with a 9mm on him, and he actually shot them dead. He said, yes, they do bleed, and yes, they do die. Talking about the 7-foot grays. The grays are working for the reptilians. The only time Phil Schneider saw a reptilian was in a locked room that he wasn't supposed to know about. He was being brought in for an interview, and he happened to be going down this hallway, and he saw a strange visitor. He couldn't tell who it was. It was a darkly lit room. And he asked questions. He said, who do you guys got in there? And they didn't tell him at first. Well, came out, it turned out to be a reptilian. And he convinced them to allow him to talk to him because nobody could have any success communicating with this entity, this being. And basically, he had some success over a period of time, but the environment was very hot. It was more natural to their home planet, basically, where they were from. But like I said, I talk about living underground. Al Bielek would talk about underground is not as hot as you think it is. I always thought that's why they were underground, is because, well, it was so hot, and reptilians, like reptiles above ground, are very cold-blooded creatures, so they would need a lot of heat to stay warm. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Al Bielek came out and said it's not as hot down there as you think. He said even around volcanic activity, the bases of volcanoes, it's really not that hot like you would think it would be down there. I thought he said it was a constant 51 degrees Fahrenheit, pretty much consistently all around the world underground. But you've got a lot of activity underground. So we've talked about Phil Schneider boring tunnels with that magneto-leviton technology, and trains going Mach 2, and this is all over the world. Construction really ramped up in the 1990s, big time with him. He was the one really leading the way of this. He was a minerals and a geology expert, so that's why they had him out as a contractor, United States contractor working for the federal government. He had some experiences at the end of his tenure that made him leave his service working for the government. And it was a big meeting of the minds, and at the end of it, there were two different meetings. They were NATO meetings, and there was a whole big table set out, and up on the balcony at the top were a whole bunch of 7-foot grays. And he said, this is not the kind of people I want to be keeping my company with. They went to one more meeting, and the aliens were there, and he said, that's it. And they said, Mr. Schneider, you can't quit. And he said, well, yes, I can quit. and he didn't even collect his last 2 paychecks. So he never did get paid for the last 2. And then he went, Al Bielek convinced him to talk about it, and he had 14 attempts on his life. And he was scared as hell. Those were his exact words. In that last interview he gave, the very last one before he died, he said he drove all the way from his home in Oregon. I'm sorry, it was near Portland, Oregon, and he drove all the way down to Las Vegas, Nevada by car. And he said he was scared as hell to go back because government agents, secret operatives, were running him off the road. And there had been a couple shots on him, and up to that point there were 13 attempts. Well, the 14th attempt, I've talked about it before, killed him. And what they did to this man, he was already in bad shape from his firefight in Dulce, New Mexico in 1979 under the ground, where an alien shot out a blue plasma beam with its hand. It had a black amulet box as a necklace on its chest, and that somehow gave it the power and the energy to project what he called a blue plasma beam, a particle accelerator or something. And it opened Phil Schneider up all the way from here, chest, center cavity, all the way down to his torso. And Al Bielek confirmed this. He knew the man very well. He had seen him, he'd seen it, and Phil Schneider was also missing fingers on his hand from this. So there's no way anybody would cut his own fingers off. It's not going to happen. There were detractors along the way who tried to refute Schneider's story, but now, as the truth is being shared out there and people are starting to catch on, and we're starting to come in the age of Aquarius where everybody knows the information, a lot of the alien stuff is getting out there. Sidetrack just a little bit. I know you guys probably caught wind of the Jim Carrey thing. I haven't really talked about that yet. At first, it wasn't really a big deal to me. I didn't talk about it. At first, I thought it was Jim Carrey, who just had reconstructive nose surgery, a rhinoplasty, and an eyelid tuck, and all that stuff. Jim Carrey, why would he do it at the age of 64? Makes no sense. So, it's not the Jim Carrey we knew before. This man was not precocious about his looks. The eye color was different. The eyebrows had been thinned out from the last pictures that we have seen of him in recent years. It's too much change. The nose was a completely different nose. So you could say, yeah, and like I said, the eyelids were tucked up. Is it a man wearing a mask? People were asking, is it a clone? It's certainly not Jim Carrey. It's not the Jim Carrey that we've all known. So the reason that I'm talking about this now, I'm not saying it's an alien. I'm just saying, why is it a big deal? Well, it's because why are they lying to us? What's the reason for it? It's because Jim Carrey talked about a lot of this stuff with the Illuminati, the secret societies, stuff like that. And then you get into the other rabbit holes that I've been talking about with Sean Combs and Ally Carter. Sean Combs is Puff Daddy or P. Diddy, and he raped so many people. Boys, girls, men, women, and he has over 1,000 accusers. A couple different investigation teams, one in New York, one in Texas, that have done great work, and he has settled multi-million-dollar lawsuits out of court, civil lawsuits with many people. Yet he only had 3 charges levied against him, and of those 3, only 1 stuck. The grand jury found him guilty of trafficking, basically, and that was it. And he only got 4 years. Well, that release date has now been pushed up for Sean Combs, and he is now projected to get out April 25th of 2028, only doing 4 years of hard time. And he's in a low-security prison right now. So is this really what we want? Phil Schneider talked about this a lot. He talked about Janet Reno back in 1995. In 96, he talked about how sexually deviant she was as a lesbian and all the things she stood for, working in our Senate and stuff. And he said, is this really what we want? Is this the country that we want to have in the future? And she was as evil. At the time, he mentioned Janet Reno was one of the most evil people he had ever known. And, could she have been one of those among us, you guys who are old enough who have watched the movie They Live, 1987 with Roddy Piper, where he puts the Hoffman lenses on and he starts seeing everything different, the hidden messages. He sees the aliens. Look at the Nintendo game, It was The Simpsons, Bart versus the Space Mutants. And in that game, came out about 1990, 91-ish, Bart Simpson was wearing sunglasses, and he could see the aliens. It was the same concept. So, and I've talked about Dicenian glass. Dicenian glass was made by this Amish guy in the late 1800s. I want to say 1878, if I'm thinking right. And it was like a blue, cobalt blue glass to where you could actually see some things like alien UFO ships. You could see things that were, it wasn't real definitive at first. He had to kind of work at it a little bit, but you could see things that were not exactly of the 3 dimensions that we're used to seeing. And there are products out there that claim to have Dicenian glass in them. So there are certain ways you can see things that are not normally of this dimension. And I'm going to be releasing videos here very soon this week on this channel of extraterrestrial sightings, demonic sightings. North Carolina, where the guy screamed, "That's not human," in his truck, and he saw something on the side of the road that appeared to him as a Civil War soldier, and lo and behold, he didn't know it. He was actually passing a Civil War burial ground. So could it have been a ghost? Could it have been something stuck in time? Al Bielek talks about time travel, and he claimed that he did time travel many different times, and talked about the years he went to and all this stuff. It was very fascinating. I encourage you guys to look up Al Bielek and listen to some of the stuff. Channel 3X on YouTube has a lot of those videos, if you're a believer like I am. But the X-Files, I've got that in the thumbnail for you. Ever since that first episode pilot in 1993, where, you know, Mulder, and you see the poster that I want to believe, I've got that in the thumbnail for you. And he spray paints the orange X on the road with the spray paint of where he had his UFO sighting. And I've talked to you guys about Germany, July 20th of 2020, where I saw a UFO ship sitting in the sky, and my friend Tanya Durenberger told me it was one of Indrid Cold's ships. I'm a firm believer in Indrid Cold. That's one of the alien sightings that you're going to hear more about that as we get closer to November this year. I'm going to try to get a video on the anniversary date for Indrid Cold and Mothman. The 3rd weekend of September is our big Mothman Festival in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And we just had, I missed it because my truck is still down, the Frogman Festival in Loveland, Ohio, which is just north of Cincinnati. And that's where a cryptid called the Frogman was seen. And there was another Frogman type creature seen Brazil. I'm pretty sure it was northern Brazil. Much more recently. The Frogman in Loveland, I want to say that was 1978 was the sighting. A policeman actually saw it. Saw this creature hop away, you know, by his car, and nobody ever saw it again, to my knowledge. But there are a couple movies out there, and they showed them at this festival. So let's get into types of extraterrestrials real quick here. And I've talked about the reptilians, how they could be among us, political figures. You see Queen Elizabeth, Nancy Pelosi. There's been a lot of talk that even she herself has said that she was a reptilian in interviews and stuff. It was really strange. And you've got Mark Zuckerberg saying it too. And I talked about that in the Ally Carter experience, where she alleges that people like her, or like Mark Zuckerberg and Ellen DeGeneres and Oprah Winfrey, are all submarine operators, and that's how they are trafficking kids in the waters. So it's very scary stuff as far as the human trafficking component goes. Phil Schneider talked about the reptilians and the Greys, both. We are not top of the food pyramid. They actually survive through the granular secretions of human beings, and the younger the better. Adrenochrome. You get Google Chrome. I've talked about that before. That's where the name Google Chrome comes from, is adrenochrome, so you know there's something to it. Anderson Cooper of CNN, the gay news reporter, where his mom was Gloria Vanderbilt, and there is a picture of Anderson. Well, it's not Anderson Cooper. It was actually his brother at the time, Aaron Cooper. I think it was Aaron. And he's now supposedly, they said he died, but the rabbit hole conspiracy theorists are saying that Aaron Cooper, if I have the first name right, transitioned to a woman, and that woman is, oh, the big woman with the red hair. The name is evading me at the moment, but yeah, supposedly he transitioned into her, and they all played it off like he died. So, when it comes to your legacy news media, what can you really trust anymore? I'm a 2007 Ball State University graduate with a telecommunications degree news option, and I knew back then that it was biased, fake, and controlled. You couldn't just talk about what you wanted. It had to be approved. It had to be, regulated. So I just didn't like that. So, here I be. But the alien thing's always been enticing to me. I've devoted many years of my research to this. Guys like Bob Lazar and remote viewing. Bob Lazar was involved in the back engineering of a spacecraft. I don't remember the decade, but out in Area 51, and I believe out in New Mexico. And he talked about it, and now he talks about remote viewing. He still has a YouTube channel today, and if you want to catch his stuff, look him up. It's very interesting. They consider remote viewing like pseudoscience. I think it's real. In the Montauk Project, which the show The Stranger Things is based off of, if you guys have watched The Stranger Things, that show is based off of the Montauk Project, and a guy who is central to the whole Montauk story, a guy by the name of Preston Nichols, who became really good friends with Alfred Bielek, lo and behold, because Al Bielek was purported to be involved in the Montauk experiment back then, before they did the memory wipes and all this stuff. Back then, Al Bielek was not a good person. He was actually involved with this stuff, and according to one eyewitness, claimed, who wanted to protect his identity, there's a documentary on the Montauk Project, and I've happened to watch it a few times, and this witness said that Al Bielek was actually one of the guys who came with his dad, supposedly, and took him under the base of Montauk, which was Camp Hero out in Long Island, New York. And it wasn't really his dad. It was a guy driving a vehicle that looked like his father, but his friend told him at the time not to get in. It wasn't his dad, and he said, "You're crazy. It's my dad." So he got in, and it turned out not to be. And he was accompanied by Al Bielek. Well, at that time, Al Bielek was working with the government doing some of these things, and so was Preston Nichols. Preston Nichols was working with the government, and he wasn't really, I don't want to say he was a bad guy, but they threatened him, they forced him because of their knowledge. These were extremely intelligent people. Their history, Phil Schneider worked for the government. He was a United States contractor as a geologist and a mineral guy, but because of their smarts, they were recruited by the United States government. And he didn't know what he was doing. He just thought, well, I'm building bases. Talking about Phil Schneider, boring tunnels underground. We're building bases, it's just my way is faster than the old way of doing it. Then he found out, wait a minute, these are DUMBs, deep underground military bases, and they're going to be used for, essentially, concentration camps are underground as well. You've got a DUMB under Los Angeles. I can't remember what that's called, but it's not good. It's where the Hollywood basically trafficked the young kids and the elites and stuff. And you've got one, Sean Combs had his other home in Miami, Florida. So, there's one down there. So there's a lot going on. Right actually across from where Sean Combs was living in Miami, you've got a submarine base and stuff like that. So it's not hard to put two and two together and see, oh, wait a minute, Sean Combs only got charged for one crime, 4 years of hard time? Come on, man. We need to make a public spectacle out of these people feasting on our kids and our youth and doing these sexual things with people. It should never be overlooked. It should never be acceptable. And this administration needs to do better. They need, Pam Bondi needs to reveal all of it. I think she's about to get fired. I talked about that over a year ago, and it hasn't happened yet, but I think Pam Bondi's about to get fired. So there's a lot going on right now in our country, our world. Is Project Bluebeam going to happen? I think so. I think this Iran war it's big, and there was a guy, I can't remember his name, I'll look it up for you. I'll try to come out on another video here very soon, but this guy was murdered, and he talked about The United States was going to fake a war. Well, not fake. They were going to start a war with Iran. And when this happened, they were going to institute power outages, sweeping power outages across the United States, to where they were going to blame that on the country of Iran, but it wouldn't be them doing it. It would be us, and they were going to take out the major dissidents, people talking about what's really going on. And it was going to happen in the middle of the night. So there's a lot going on with that. I mean, is that going to happen? That guy was killed for saying it, for speaking about it. He's no longer with us. They called it a suicide. It wasn't. You know how these things go. So there's all that. A couple other names before I wrap it up. This video may die on me. I'm on like 4% probably. I talked about Bob Lazar, reverse engineering, aircraft, Area 51. John Lear, he was part of the Lear family, and he was a huge component, a huge believer of UFOs, and he talked about a lot of different ones. The Rendlesham incident out of England, that was another setup, actually, where our government was in cahoots with them, and I think they knew it was going to happen. I shouldn't say our government, our global government. When I say our government, Phil talks about Agenda 2030, and that's basically where the New World Order takeover. We're inching closer to the goal line. And, you know, now we're seeing, I can talk about some of these things, like the jabs and stuff like that, and I'm not censored the way I was. Some videos are coming out and saying they've done that before. Now, the goalposts are being pushed farther back because we're so closer to end game. You know, this war has started. Is it going to be World War III? I think it is. I've been saying that. That guy that was murdered, it might have been David Goldberg. I don't think I have the name right, but it's something along those lines. I'm going to look it up and find out for you. But he talked about all of that stuff, and he was killed for saying it. So that's a lot of what I came on here to talk about. There's always so much more, but I think I've taken up enough of your time. I'm going to get you diving down the rabbit hole farther on the alien stuff. You're going to hear more about it in your news. It's going to be leaked. It's going to be revealed. They've withheld all this stuff for you, and the X-Files talked about it. The X-Files put a lot of truth bombs up. Before I go, the Chronicles of Narnia. C.S. Lewis wrote, in that book, a Narnia movie is coming out this year in 2026 on Christmas Day by Greta Gerwig. She's the producer of it. And The Magician's Nephew, if you've never read that book, please do. It's a quick read. The movie is going to be fantastic. A boy and a girl, children. Al Bielek talked about time travel, and some of the movie or videos I've been watching lately said, yeah, time travel, the government's been doing research with it and sending experimenters, people who are willing to subject themselves to time travel and experiment, and most of the adults never came back. A couple of them came back disfigured. Al Bielek talked about that with the Philadelphia experiment. That's how he met Phil Schneider, is because their fathers were associated with that project. That was the USS Eldridge, the big ship out in Philadelphia Harbor, where the guys got fused into the metal deck of the ship, the bulwark of the ship, and because there was they used the 4 Tesla coils, and all that amperage caused, they were trying to travel through time, and Al Bielek and his brother Duncan Cameron Jr. jumped overboard, and they did travel through time to from 1943 to 1983 and they appeared at Montauk Island. It was so strange how everything is so connected on all these stories. And then that was 2 days after I was born. So I was born August 10th of 83, and they appeared at the base of Camp Hero in Montauk Island August 12th of 1983. So there's a lot going on with all of that stuff, and it's hard to segue from one topic to the other without it all blending together, because I think for those of us who have done research over years and you come across things, there are certain consistencies with it, you know. And the X-Files told us. They tried to drop a lot of truth bombs about this stuff. So I'll leave you with that. I'm going to come out with more videos on the X-Files, the Chronicles of Narnia, and the guy that was murdered. I keep saying David Goldberg. I know that's not the right name, but it's close to that. I'll get that for you very soon. So thanks for tuning in with me, guys. I appreciate you as always. Stay tuned for these videos that are coming out to try to keep you in the loop on what's going on. And until then, as always, Godspeed.